Yo, what's up and welcome. I'm the one and only West Coast King, and welcome back to Major League 90. I know it has been a good long while since I've actually sat down and recorded one of these videos, and honestly, I've just been kind of taking a break. If you're like me, I watch not only the MLS, but I watch a lot of Premier League as well, and if you do that, that is literally year-round. There is no break from it, so every once in a while, just kind of need to take a step back and take a little bit of a break, and I've kind of been doing that for the last week or two. Just really have not been watching too much MLS. But we are back today, and I have a very specific goal or very specific video in mind for today. And what I want to do is I want to take a look at three teams that we will call perennial contenders. Three teams that are normally powerhouses in their conference, powerhouses in the league, title contenders every season. At least they have been for the last 2 or 3 years. And this year, they're kind of riding the red line. They're either in the last possible playoff spot in 6th place, or they're just below it in 7th place. There are three teams that I want to look at, and all three of them have had their struggles this season. So to start off with, let's kick it off in the Eastern Conference, and it's the New York Red Bulls. And of the three teams that we're going to talk about, this is the one that, at the end of the day, my final summation would be, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with them. I don't know how to fix them, and when the playoffs come, I don't know if they're going to be there or not. Honestly, I just don't know. They're very much a question mark for me. But if we take a look statistically at the New York Red Bulls, they've conceded 25 goals this season. Pretty much bang average for the league and the Eastern Conference. Not a great defense, but they're not going to, kill you either. They're okay. They're not going to win you games. At best, they're going to keep you in games and allow your offense to come through and try to win it for you. And that's where the problem is. Offensively, 20 goals scored. 3rd worst in the MLS. Only Colorado and DC United have scored fewer goals than Red Bulls this year. And nobody is expecting Colorado or DC to be around when the playoffs come. Those are two very, very bad teams. So, obviously, the problem lies on the offensive end. But I don't know any possible way to fix it. Honestly, I just don't know. Now, to be fair, I haven't seen quite as many Red Bull games as maybe some of you have. Honestly, I think the only time I've seen them play from beginning to end, a full New York Red Bulls game, was at CenturyLink Field in Seattle. I was there for that game. And you don't go into CenturyLink Field, even with the Sounders struggling this season, you don't go into CenturyLink Field and just slap them around. It just doesn't happen. You have to go in there and grind it out and try to get a victory. It's usually not very pretty if you're able to beat them there. But New York, they didn't stand a chance in that game. That might have been the easiest win the Sounders have had all season long. I think they ended 3-1. New York did get a late consolation goal, but offensively, nothing. No movement, no passing, no creativity, no spark. It was a dead performance. And if that's the way they play, and that's how they've played all season long, it's no wonder they're in 7th place. I'm actually surprised they're that high up in the standings. The team I saw on that day was absolutely abysmal. And how do you fix it? Again, I don't know. I don't know. I'm sorry, New York Red Bulls fans. As I would say, one of the cornerstones of the league, I kind of want to see them do well, but I don't know what the problem is. I don't. Just take, for example, their last game against New England, which actually took place today, which is Wednesday. You're watching this, it's confusing. I know, it's okay. They played New England on Wednesday. They beat New England. I think they were on the road as well, which is actually very impressive. But New York only managed 12 shots to New England's 20. That is the kind of offense we're talking about. How they scored, they had 4 shots on target and scored 3 goals. If they're that efficient, then it's not a problem, but they're never that efficient. So I don't know. Honestly, this is the one team I don't know what's wrong with them or how to fix it. Moving on to the Western Conference now, and another team sitting currently just below that red line in 7th place is the LA Galaxy. Oh boy. If there is a face of the league, it's the LA Galaxy. Always a contender, always a playoff team at least. This year, not so much. Now, the LA Galaxy this season have been bad. How bad have they been, you ask? Okay, let me just throw this out there for you, okay? Normally at the StubHub Center, the LA Galaxy are damn near unbeatable. In their last 6 home games in the league, they have 3 losses and 3 draws. Haven't won a game in their last 6. Their last home win was all the way back, hold on, I actually have to look this up, all the way back on April 7th against Montreal. April 7th was their last home win in the MLS. Yes, they have a couple of US Open Cup wins at home, but those are against USL teams. I think they're USL teams. I'm not even sure, but they're not MLS opponents. So they have been maybe the worst they've ever been at home this season. Maybe they might be the worst they've ever been, period. And on top of that, I think we can now say that they've hit rock bottom. This past Tuesday, they lost at home, which again, remember, they don't usually do that. At least not outside of this season, they don't. They lost at home to RSL, which is one of the worst teams in the league. Not only did they lose at home, they lost 6-2. 6-2 to RSL. If that is not rock bottom, I don't freaking want to know what is. That has got to be the worst performance I've ever seen from an LA Galaxy team. It was absolutely shocking. That's the only word I can use to describe it. It was shocking. No enthusiasm, no energy, no want to play. That defense just literally stood there and watched RSL score and score and score and score, and they did nothing to stop them. I felt horrible for the goalkeeper, Clement Diop, at the end of that thing. I mean, he was trying, but he was getting no help from his defenders. The 2 goals that LA did score, well, the first one, Ashley Cole, was about 7 yards offsides. How he was not flagged for offsides, I don't know, but that one shouldn't even have counted. The second one, which was a late consolation goal for Bradford Jameson. Sorry, it was Bradford Jameson. And that was very lucky. He took a massive deflection and kind of chipped up over Nick Ramondo's head. They could have been beaten maybe 8 or 9-0 in that game. They're lucky it wasn't 8 or 9-0. And that is how bad the LA Galaxy have been this season. Now, what is actually wrong with them? Well, I know they've lost Landon Donovan in recent years. They lost Robbie Keane. They've lost a lot of that star power that made LA Galaxy the LA Galaxy. Or, what fans see when they look at them are those star players. They've lost a lot of that in recent years. But I think the biggest loss that they're still dealing with, and they have not figured out a way to actually overcome it, is their head coach, Bruce Arena. I don't think there's ever been, now I don't think at least, there's ever been a head coach that's had that much of an impact on a team. But that's the only thing I can think of that would put them in this situation. They don't have the faith in themselves without him there to overcome any kind of adversity. The second that the first thing goes wrong, shit hits the fan, and it's another thing and another thing and another thing, and they can't recover from that. And honestly, when push comes to shove and the playoffs roll around for this team, I don't think LA is going to be there. I just don't think that they have the mental fortitude, the mental toughness to overcome any kind of adversity, and I just don't see it from this team. That team I saw out there against RSL should be ashamed of themselves, and I know the fans in LA are going to let them hear it every single game from here on out. That was a disgrace. Oh, by the way, before we move on, next up for LA Galaxy is a derby match in the US Open Cup against San Jose, and then they welcome to town Manchester United for a friendly. Now, it's probably not going to be a full-strength Manchester United team, but does it really matter? They just lost 6-2 at home to RSL. Manchester United is coming to town. That should be fun. All right, so moving on, the third and final team we're going to talk about is the Seattle Sounders. Wouldn't be in the Major League 90 episode without talking about the Sounders, right? This happens to be the only of these 3 teams that currently sits above the red line. They're in 6th place in the Western Conference, but they have had their ups and downs this season. Now, when it comes to Seattle, I would like to think that I have a little bit of knowledge there as I watch them week in and week out, so I have a pretty good idea of what is ailing this team. And I do say ailing this team literally. The first thing you gotta look at is injuries. The starting center back pair for the Sounders that truly anchored that team last season was Chad Marshall and Roman Torres. And they have started together in that defense only 2 or 3 times all year. Injuries have absolutely hammered the Sounders at every turn. Every time they start to get a little bit of momentum, they pick up more and more injuries. You look at that defense, like I said, those two haven't been together in there very often. They've given up 28 goals this year, which is very unlike Seattle. Stephen Fry has stood on his head at times to keep them in games, but it's just not been enough. They need Marshall and Torres in there. And this past week, they were on the road at Colorado with maybe the healthiest team they've had all season long. And in the first 10 minutes, they lost not only the captain, Ozzy Alonso, which is maybe the most important player on the field for them, to what looked like a very bad knee injury. I haven't heard anything else about it, but it didn't look good. He stayed down on the ground, had to be stretchered off, so that is a massive, massive loss for them, especially right now with Christian Roldan away at international duty. But not only did they lose Ozzy Alonso, 2 or 3 minutes later, they lost Chad Marshall to a foot injury. Those are 2 huge key players for them. And again, they're going to be without them probably for a pretty good length of time. And it's every single time they start to get something going, they get hammered on the injury front. Now, injuries aside, Seattle has been very, very unlucky this year. And I know a lot of teams can say that. And it's probably true. But the Seattle Sounders have had a lot of really, really poor referee decisions go against them. A lot of just bad bounces that ended up as going goals against them. It's just been like a never-ending cycle of shit this season for Seattle. Just bad news after bad luck after bad bounce. It's just been all bad, and yet somehow they still find themselves in a playoff spot currently and only 2 points back of third place Portland. There's definitely still light at the end of the tunnel for Seattle this season. In fact, if you remember back to last season, in which they did go on to win the MLS Cup title, they were kind of in the same position, floundering around that red line, not quite being able to find the right, the right moves, the right situation to, push themselves forward. But the front office came through. They made the right move. They pulled the right string, brought in Nico Ladero. Around the same time, they got Roman Torres back, and that kind of jump-started that season. They went on to win the title. This team is no less talented than the team was last year. They have all the same core pieces in place, and they just need to, again, make the right moves, pull the trigger at the right time on the right player, and I think that they could very well be a title contender again this season. It would be very, very tough to do it, but I still think that they could possibly go there. They've already made one move in this transfer window. They brought in a right back, which they desperately, desperately needed. That will allow Gustav Svensson to play in the midfield. He is a natural midfielder, remember, not a center back. He can move into the midfield, which is important now that, again, they're going to not have Ozzy Alonso, I don't think, for quite some time. They're making the right moves. I do trust the front office of the Seattle Sounders, and that's why, of these 3 teams, I would put my money on Seattle to be in the playoffs this season. Maybe not so much the other 2. So that is really all that I wanted to talk about for today. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are on those 3 teams down in the comments below. New York Red Bulls, LA Galaxy, and the Seattle Sounders. If you had to pick one of them, which one would you put your money on to be in the playoffs come the end of the season? I'm interested to see what you guys have to say on that, because those are 3 fairly big teams, fairly popular teams, and I'm pretty sure I know which way you guys are going to lean, but it's either way. I'm interested to see what you guys have to say on that one. So that's it for this one. If you did enjoy it, make sure to let me know by leaving a like below. Subscribe if you're new. I'll see you when we come back for some more Major League 90. See ya.